Good morning. We're going to talk today about the miracle of the dirted tank. I've got several hundred tanks in my shop, most of which have deep sand beds and are dirted, and have been that way for many years, going on 10 years. So I want to walk around and talk about some of these tanks and what it means for them to be dirted. Let's start with a tank that has been my favorite for years. It's a 200-gallon, 6-foot tank with about an 8-inch deep sand bed in it. It was set up with soil approximately 8 years ago. Now, many of the plants in these tanks you will be seeing are not original plants. I sell plants, and I sell them out of my tank. So, in this case, you're seeing some plants that, well, I have waru in here, so they get chewed up. These are baby waru, and they do love to chew on plants more than anything. But here's the benefit of this tank. With its 8-inch sand bed, I run an air stone, a power head over in that corner, and I have a canister filter on it. I clean the canister filter about once every 6 months. And I'm constantly pulling the power head out and the pump that's in the tank, feeding the canister and removing bits and pieces of plant material from it. This tank is self-sustaining. It gets very little, if any, real maintenance. I do a water change in it perhaps once every 4 months or so, and I only change about 25%. The rest of the time, it just really pretty much takes care of itself. You can see some algae down here on the glass, but that's all that's there. And I don't think this glass has been cleaned for months. There's some crud there, some algae, a little bit. It really is a self-sustaining tank, and that's the miracle of the deep sand bed, that it takes care of itself. Now let's move over. These are a group of small tanks. They're 15 gallons. Again, they've been set up for going on 10 years, all as deep sand beds with a soil base many years ago. I sell plants out of them routinely, so they don't always look as nicely sculptured as they should, but you can see everything is very vigorous and very healthy in them. I have a Ponagitans going right now. You'll see a lot of them. I've got curvaceous and a large number of I can't think. The lacy Ponagitans, Madagascar lace. Not a lot of fish in these right now. I've kind of gone down a bit. I've been moving I used to have all of my bread and butter in these tanks, and I've moved them. They're now in a different system. I'll try to show that to you. And I'm gradually setting these up for a higher end fish. I have McMaster Eye in here. And there's a pretty one coming across. I have cockatoides in here. That's a little blue line killie down there. I don't know if you can see them. Some glow tetras. They'll probably stay over here. And then in back of me, it's a tank that I've been working on this for about 4 years. It's a black water tank. Now I've got a Ponagitans growing in it because they love black water. And I have, these are the cockatoides that I've been kind of bragging on. She's been protecting these babies in here. You might see some. Protecting these babies for several weeks. There's now a second female, and I saw her earlier down in back of this log. She has babies as well. So I've got 2 troops of these little guys taking care of their babies, keeping everybody else at bay, and they're being pretty successful. These babies, as I said, have been in here now a couple of weeks. They're slow growing at this stage, so we're not seeing a lot of development. But this is a tank, again, that really sustains itself. It never gets cleaned, gets fed a little bit. It has some flowing water, a few plants that are starting to grow on the trunk. Ponagitans largely in the system. They're kind of covered with mulm because this is a pretty malmy tank, and that's very deliberate. I want all of this loose mulm in order to be able to feed babies and also protect them from predation. And so far that's working out pretty well. It makes for a dramatic tank, not always a beautiful tank, certainly not particularly pristine, but one that is just really remarkable for its ability to sustain itself with little or no real care. The miracle of a deep sand bed is the ability of that system to sustain itself long term for years and years with a minimum of intrusion. Just looking for some babies. I know they're in here. I'm not seeing them. Oh, I just saw something dark. The other one's down in back there. Well, let's move on. These tanks, I'm gradually building up a collection of Tanganyika cichlids. Here are some shell dwellers. Now again, these are all deep sand beds. So they're tanks that never get much care, never get much activity, but they maintain populations of fish and plants over the long haul. These guys have been in here about 6 months, and they're just beginning to look like they might start having some babies. It's been going a little slow. I have pea puffers up here, some crevensis, and a few other little fish. Same deal. This is about 4 inches of sand in this 20-gallon tank. We set up a 20 at Fisher and Fever yesterday, and it sort of looks like this. It's got about 5 inches of sand in it, with maybe 7 inches of clear space of water column. There were some duboisi in here. This is a black widow frontosa, and maybe the only fish in this tank right now. There's a calvus up there. Now, that's not a calvus, that's a compressiceps. He has managed to jump from this tank into this tank. And he's setting up housekeeping here with a little Julie. There's another little Julie over here. There are 4 or 5 of them in here. I rarely see them all at once. This is compressiceps. Now, if you look in the back, there's a Madagascar lace right in the middle and the front. You'll see how these plants are just growing really kind of naturally. They've been in here now for about 3 months, most of these. They're stable, they're slow growing, but it's a very solid kind of growth. Again, the deep sand bed. This one's about 4 inches. And then more of the same along here. Now, let's see, there's another tank over here that I want to show you that's unique. This one has no plants in it. Occasionally, I will put an Amazon sword in here. I usually sell them pretty quickly because they're kind of dramatic. But this is a tank of aggressive fish. Many of them are fish that were returned to the shop because they became too aggressive. And you can see it's a mix of Central American, South American, and African, Victorian and Malawi. There's compressiceps, a couple of albino compressiceps back there. Just a little bit of everything. There are enough fish in here to make it difficult for any one person to be picked on, any one fish to be picked on. This is a 4-inch deep sand bed and provides a foundation for this tank that allows me to keep a large number of fish in here with very minimal water changes. Now I have down here a sump that's running this system. I have water jetting in to the tank through this pipe with holes in it, and it's overflowing into the sump and then being pumped back up. So I've got a pretty good circulation system, and that's really all that's on here. Occasionally I'll have an air stone in here. I don't see one now. These are high oxygen fish, and so they're showing no stress at all, which means the system is working really quite well. Again, the deep sand bed provides a stability that allows for this kind of environment to to exist. Without it, I would have to be doing routine water changes every week or so. I'd have to be cleaning it routinely. I don't do any of that. This has not had a water change for about 4 months, although we're going to do one shortly. So that's that. Now there's just a couple more I want to show you. The 55 that's over here. This tank was set up November 15th. It has a light that stays on most of the time. It's just a little LED. A few tetras, a few angels. I've not put a lot of fish in here. The plants are just going gangbusters. I've been selling out of here again, so I've lost a lot of the original plants that were put in because they've been sold. But it's a pretty stable environment and can be made prettier simply by more planting. It could use the stronger light. It's part of the reason I have it on kind of non-stop, to be able to make sure it gets enough light. Okay, one more I want to show you. And that's all the way up, and actually two more. In the front of the store, we have a tank here that has sheep's head minnows in it. Now, if some of you who have watched the videos on my channel have seen the babies and eggs being laid. This will occur again in fairly short order. Sometime this spring, in the next month or so, we're going to start having babies in here. They're getting real close. These are babies from last spring. Again, a deep sand bed. All of these plants have volunteered in here. I started out with little bits, little kind of sprigs, and they've all grown up. And then one more. This is a 55 with just a sand bed. Nice plants. It gets a little direct sunlight. Some large scats that seem to like it in here. And then this is a 40-gallon long. That is my favorite planted tank. Which is, I can pull plants out of here every day of the week and still have more. This tank's been set up for at least 10 years. It's had a wide variety of fish in it, of plants in it. These are some I got from Lucas just recently. That's a lily. You see it's got some algae in the back, but it never really takes over. Stays pretty much on the bottom. This tank gets almost no care at all. I go in it once in a while when I need plants for other tanks, then I'll pull a bunch out. But beyond that, it never gets cleaned. The glass never gets cleaned. And you can see it's not dirty. The light stays on 24/7. I've got just a couple of little LEDs here. It gets fed very occasionally. That's why there's so few fish, because they want it to be able to sustain itself, and they do pretty well. Did a water change 6 months ago. I'll do another one probably beginning of the summer. This tank gets ignored month after month after month. There's the paracotatoides. just put them in here recently. I'm real anxious to see them raise some babies in here. Alright, so that's the idea. These are tanks that are set up for the lazy fish keeper. Or more to the point, for the fish keeper who wants to simply be able to create an environment that allows fish to live a very natural kind of life with a minimum of intrusion. And that's what we've achieved. An absolute minimum of intrusion into the tank. So, I hope you've enjoyed this little tour around some of our dirted tanks. The intent was to give you a sense in which a dirted tank is a miracle tank. It's able to sustain itself with little or no intervention by the aquarist. We set it up and let it run. And if it's done right to begin with, it will run for years and years and years with little maintenance. Water changes are important, but they don't need to be done on a routine basis. If you do a water change in these tanks every 6 months, it's adequate. Track pH and track nitrates. Those are the only two things I ever look at. And I check maybe once every 2 or 3 months to see whether there's been change. So, hope you enjoyed this. Hope I communicated something. We'll see you again soon. Father Fish, signing off.